always ask. Never tell yourself no. There's enough people in the world that will tell you no. You don't count yourself out. Let the opportunity tell you no. You don't talk yourself out of the opportunity. And that boldness, but also that wherewithal to be like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to shoot my shot. I believe I belong in every room. I felt like naively, I was like, I think I have something to offer.
Working to understand each other is one of the most important parts of living together in a society. And my friend and former colleague Kamala is smack dab in the center of that effort. It's her own fault, really. She can't help herself. She keeps landing in the middle of good trouble. Most recently, this takes the form of her new venture, Kas Kas Productions. Kamala and I don't come from the same background, not even close, and yet it always feels as though we end up in good conversation together. We haven't always agreed, and our perspectives may well be to blame there. At the end of the day, though, we keep parting ways as friends. On this episode, I hope to capture some of that magic. My name is JT Erickson, and this is No More Strangers. Just like that, we're live.
Okay.
Holy cow.
Here we are.
I can't believe I'm sitting across from you right now. Many years. And Kamala, thank you. A lot of our early conversations were part of what built this in the first place.
Oh.
Maybe not directly, and we didn't always agree. And that was awesome.
I'm so happy to hear that. And when I saw that you were doing this podcast, it felt very you. You've always been a curious person. You've always loved connecting with people that are different than you. So I'm excited about what you're doing.
Thank you. And today we're here to talk about what you're doing and who you are and how you got here, because you've worked hard.
I would say so. No one has called me a slacker. Sometimes maybe an overworker, but it's been quite a journey.
Yeah. And you're balancing a lot of things. And I sort of keep an eye on you, and I have. We met.
I mean, are we revealing
Sure.
how we know each other?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I'm happy to talk about it. Well, Kamala, we met at Google in 2016, a bit of a year.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Bit of a year. In Google Play Marketing. And we were doing some stuff for the music side of the world, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where in 2016 we were from a calendar perspective, because that was a seismic year that I do think is still echoing through the year that we're in right now.
I can't imagine what you mean.
Whatever could you be referring to?
I have no idea.
I mean, I remember when I joined Google in 2015, and now I'm having a very vivid recollection of watching the election results in 2016.
Yeah.
And feeling like sick to my stomach and so distraught. And I don't think I came into work the very next day. I'm not sure if many people did.
No.
But when I came in the following day, you could just feel it in the office. Like, it feels in a lot of ways pretty different to, I think, how this time around with Trump's election feels in terms of like how I'm seeing people respond. But like, it felt like we were in a time and at a company where everyone around us was sort of mirroring the same sort of shock and disbelief and like grief and sadness.
Yeah, I recall people slowly but surely, as the results were coming in, would just sort of drop off from conversation.
Yeah.
I think I was referred to as an anarchist during some of that by one of our mutual friends. I was like, well, this isn't what I expected. Here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was quite a time. I remember going in on election day and being surrounded by so many people wearing their Hillary blazers and pantsuits, and like the energy was high.
Yeah.
And the crash was real.
Yeah.
The crash was
real.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were definitely down in the Mountain View office, and I was definitely up in the Fremont, Seattle office.
Well, remember, I have always been based in Los Angeles. So I think a lot of people that we worked with... The word definitely was wrong. A lot of people that we worked with thought that I was based in Mountain View. And I think that goes back to something you said earlier about like having worked hard. So because I was in a remote office, quote unquote, I wasn't in headquarters Google up in the Bay.
Got it.
I felt like I needed to work really hard to be visible and present.
Yeah.
So I took advantage of like having a lot of freedom. This was before I had a kid. And, having pretty generous like travel policy.
Seriously.
To be on campus when I needed to be. And I think I was there probably every other week.
Same, which is why I probably thought you were there and you probably thought I was there.
Right, because I'm like, I don't know if I remember that you weren't there either.
Nah, 2 weeks a month. Yep.
Yeah.
That's too funny. But that's just how we met.
Yes.
And a lot of time has passed since then. But what I'd really love to hear more about today is how you got there and who you are, because you are a lot of things. And I know we have limited time today, and I'd like to get into as much of it as we can, because I think unpacking you and the reflections here, I think are going to be I think this is going to be a good conversation, not to front run whatever.
I was going to say, we're promising a lot. So
hopefully
we can deliver. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when I came to Google in 2015, I was about 4 years into my time in Los Angeles. I'm originally from New York, but I was born in Jamaica. Grew up in New York City, both in the Bronx and then Queens. And then after college, I lived in Manhattan. My parents, as Jamaican immigrants, definitely talked to me a lot and talked to each other a lot about some of the stark differences between Jamaica and being here in the U.S. Obviously, a key difference. Well, you guys can't see me. I'm Black. Surprise.
What?
I know. And for my parents, being Black in America was definitely a very new experience for them, coming from a predominantly Black country. There were ways that people treated them that they were not used to. There were ways that people excluded them and judged them and pre-assumed things about them that just were not the case in Jamaica. The best way I can describe it is like in Jamaica, race is not going to be a determinant to sort of life outcomes. There's no correlation. You're just as likely to be a janitor as you are to be the president of a university or a bank or a criminal or an upstanding citizen. Like race is not the sorting factor.
Sure.
In the U.S., race is very much a heavy sorting factor. It is strongly correlated with outcomes. It is strongly correlated with assumptions and stereotypes. And my parents were just not used to that. And so from a very young age, I was exposed to pretty stark conversations about race and what it meant in the country. And it wasn't internalized by me as like, that means I can't do X, Y, and Z. That means I won't be able to do X, Y, and Z. We always had very high expectations. But that meant that I had an awareness of kind of what I was up against and a commitment to sort of like rise above and defy those sort of stereotypes.
I'm trying to think how to ask this question, because your experience is instantly different from a Black American born and raised here generationally with different sets of expectations.
Right.
I'm not even sure how to ask this question because it's something I haven't thought about, given our conversations in the past. It sounds like you not having come up through generations of the structure that we have here is a massive advantage.
Yeah, but...
And that's not a negative, by the way.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. So it's interesting. I think that because I came to this country at 5 years old. So I very strongly identify as pretty American, but I have a different heritage and origin story. And I do think that origin story creates a lot of difference in my perspective.
Yeah.
There are advantages, and I think that there are maybe not disadvantages, but there are just differences.
Differences. I think that's the right way to put it. Yeah.
And I think that it is something that's obvious, that's usually glossed over by non-Black people. Non-Black people look at Black people in this country as all the same. And when you are a Black person in this country, you obviously know that Black people are not a monolith, and you understand sort of why. For me as an immigrant, but as an immigrant as a child who was educated primarily in the U.S., almost exclusively, I did a couple of years of preschool in Jamaica, but that was it. I started kindergarten in the U.S. has been surrounded by African Americans, and it also has been viewed by many in the U.S. as African American because like I don't have a strong Jamaican accent or some of the other things that would distinguish me as like an immigrant.
Right.
It's an interesting, I feel like I've always walked like an interesting like insider-outsider perspective.
Yeah.
Like it took my parents a long time to understand what it means to be African American in ways that like I understood very differently from them. I think a lot of times when you are a Black immigrant, because you are not familiar with the structural and generational racism and trauma that African Americans have experienced, and you're not educated, you've neither experienced it nor have you been fully educated on it, it's easy to come in with a POV of like, yeah, well, I mean, we got here and we worked hard to like, why can't everybody do it, right? The appeal of the quote unquote pulling yourself up by your bootstraps narrative, which I think is so toxic and pernicious, is that if you come into a race in the middle, you don't know where people started, right? You can assume that everyone started, I mean, around the same place, people had hardships and stuff, but like we did it. And I remember as an adult, like almost in a lot of ways, like educating my parents into understanding what some of the structural barriers are that they don't see as immigrants.
Right, because you were thrust into the system from the bottom as a child, and your parents came in as adults with fully formed experiences and expressions of self and understanding of self. And thank you for even bringing up that you had to educate your parents in that way. I hear that a lot from immigrants that I speak with. It's always the children who end up naturalizing the parents and helping them with it all. And that it's hard to ask somebody how their experience was different because they only have their own experience.
Right.
But if you're able to maybe reflect on it, I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
Because it's a different set of trials.
Yeah. So I definitely, again, this is where like that insider-outsider piece comes in. Because while I was not raised in Jamaica, my parents were, and they have brought like a significant part of like that upbringing and that experience and that worldview with them. Though they have also now been in the country for 30 plus years, they are very Jamaican, right? And some of the things that I think are pretty distinctive is, my parents will talk about when you're being educated in Jamaica, there is a blanket expectation that like every single child in that classroom can perform. There is no sorting by race.
Yeah.
There's classism. Classism exists everywhere, right? So if you are the child of a more affluent parent, you may be able to go to more prestigious schools, but there isn't an immediate expectation that a teacher has of you based on your skin color.
Yeah.
You can look around your society as a young person in Jamaica, and as I said at the beginning, see people that look like you, that are lawyers, doctors, politicians, presidents of banks, like titans of industry. So none of that is weird to you. That is normal. That is expected. That is what you do.
Because it's
right?
people.
It's just people, right? And so versus, I think, explain to my parents that for Black Americans who have grown up in a country where 95% of the people that are teaching them, that are their doctors, that are their lawyers, that are their, whoever in authority, anybody of means, influence, like authority over, none of those people really look like them.
Right.
Almost all of those people would have been white.
Yeah.
It creates an unspoken, if you will, expectation and a norm that like, oh, I would be the exception if I were to become X, Y, and Z. And to feel as if you would need to be the exception, you either need to have like a significant amount of belief in yourself that like, yeah, I know it's one in a whatever, but like I'll be that one. Or you just look at it and you go like, odds don't look good. So why am I doing this rat race? It doesn't feel like it's going to pan out for me. It's unlikely to.
Right. So why bother?
Right. Which is not nihilism. It's in some ways like
It's
realism.
pragmatism.
It's pragmatism, right? And so the conversations that I've had with my parents a lot and with Jamaicans in my family is like trying to, I think it's only honestly for like my Black family members in Jamaica, it's probably within the last 8 to 10 years that they've really started to see some of the barriers that like racism plays in the lives of like people of color. Because I think it just made it so visible, right? There's a lot racism didn't come to America in 2015 when he rode down that escalator.
It's a good note.
Right?
Yeah.
It didn't begin there, but I think it was very insidious, and it was very sort of, post the civil rights movement, I think was sort of the time when, if nothing else, American society was like, well, racism is not a good look. We're not going to like be really overt with it. Right? Like,
sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but that's a really interesting way to put it.
Right? I think like that was the moment when people were like, I mean, if you're going to be racist, like be quiet about it. Like, you don't got to shout it. You don't got to wear a hood. Like, that's uncool, bro. We don't do that. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not changing up who we're hiring. We're not changing up who we're okay with our kids marrying. We're not like, some people are, but some people were not.
Yeah.
Right? But they were like, yeah, I mean, don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't know the code of how racism can play out in whispers, not just in yelling, which I think a lot of immigrants, they can't even hear the whisper. They don't notice it.
And you've mentioned this about your parents.
Yeah.
And their movement through the corporate chains or the hierarchies of education.
And I mean, they definitely saw it because like, they were in those white spaces trying to advance purely from a merit basis, which is what the race that they were used to running.
Right. And it's what we ostensibly claim is part of our society. And I mean, look, I frequently believe it because, well, you look at the places that I've worked and I don't see it, quote unquote, but it doesn't. I also have a very different perspective and a very different set of experiences in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like, it's just interesting to think about the aspects of the country that are visible versus the aspects that are invisible and the dynamics at play. So I've thought even a lot about just not to totally rabbit hole down like one particular thing, but like
we have enough time to move forward on things. Yeah.
From what I've heard, this sort of a part of these conversations is going down some rabbit holes.
That's how we do.
I've been thinking a lot about even the term meritocracy and like what it even means. Like, is there...
Oh, I'm curious because it seems pretty...
any such thing? And the reason why I think that's
a good question.
Right? Like, this idea of inherent merit, right? Inherent merit that someone may have that entitles them to certain opportunities over others is, I think, a little bit of a fallacy because it assumes that there was ever any sort of an equitable starting point from which someone could have acquired merit. So, like, let me give you an example.
Please.
To illuminate it a little bit, because I know it's probably a little bit of a controversial statement, and I'm not
even going to say it's controversial. Yeah. I think it's, and I'm not necessarily ready to even argue against it. I'm more considering the terms. Right.
So here's kind of what I mean. So let's assume that most basic example I could give. 2 kids walk into the SATs. Right? They both take it.
Yep.
Right? That is an aptitude test, right?
Right.
That is the definition of like one way that one could demonstrate merit and compare merit is to give 2 people the same exact exam, right?
Yep.
What you get is what you get, right? We know that like what the SAT usually measures is like your socioeconomic like achievement.
Seems to, yes.
Right? Because it is highly correlated where kids from households of higher income typically perform better, right? Why is that? Parental influence and upbringing, access to training materials, quality of schools, examples in their neighborhood, feeling like it's just normal to perform well on an SAT versus I would be an exception if I did well. No one in my neighborhood has ever done well. Like, how do you capture that in the score? You can't, right?
Yeah. And I've heard it's interesting. I almost thought you were going to take a different approach there. One of the other conversations I've heard around the SATs specifically is also the framing of the questions or the languaging used or the
All of that,
predicates.
all of that is in there, right?
Yeah.
I think that and so when you think about the fact that even if you give two people the same exact exam, you are not getting a true capture of their merit because a lot of things happen before the point at which you gave them the exam. And all of those things absolutely impact the amount of merit that they can or can't demonstrate.
That they can bring to the table in this case.
That it makes you go sort of like, merit is sort of an inherently squishy term in and of itself. But I think that it is very like the discourse that we're seeing right now around like, we need to revert back to prioritizing merit, to me is a scapegoat or a cover for not actually elevating merit, but diminishing context. We don't want to talk about context. We don't want to know context. We don't want to know background.
Yeah. And I do hear a lot of the background and the context doesn't matter. And in those discussions, generally merit is described as the capacity or capability to do the job being requested or being defined.
Right. And you can assess that, right?
Yeah. And
if you're like, I have a code that needs to be built.
Correct.
Right?
Like, or a legal document to write, or
I don't know how
wash
you got
the
here.
dishes better than the next guy.
Correct. Yeah. Right? But I think that like the fact that we all know on some sort of an inherent level that merit itself is not purely attained should make us maybe a little bit more wary of the idea that we can fully disregard context. Does that make sense?
Largely, yes. The redefinition of merit in this case, or maybe where I think I'm struggling with your definitions, is that explicit identification of what merit means. I am always on the side of context and understanding the nuance behind how things are operating, even if I can't see it, which is frequent for various and subtle reasons, as we tap the side of our head suspiciously. Where does it fall when we're talking about this that we should hire? I haven't thought about it this way. What is the difference in terms that I'm considering merit to be and the way you're considering it? Because I agree the context is important in understanding the person. When I go out to interview somebody for a job, I care largely about how well they're going to do in the overall environment.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that doesn't really, I don't care about their race or their sexuality or their gender. I really don't. I'm hiring data scientists.
Right.
As long as we can work together, we're good. Let's go through this.
Yeah.
Where is the breakdown in what I'm describing versus what you're describing?
I think that a couple of things. I think if we have a definition of merit that understands that context also matters and that also understands that there are intangibles that people bring to a job, a role, a seat in a classroom, whatever it is.
Totally.
That have to do with their lived experience. And that can make whatever I'm building, trying to learn, working on better or different if we understand that some people have blind spots that other people don't have. If we understand that, like, if we are trying to solve a problem set that is meant to apply to a large group of people, we probably need a large group of perspectives to make sure that we haven't just numerically done the coding right. but we've been thoughtful about some other things that might not be showing up in that data set and know what questions haven't been asked and all of those things.
Look at you tailoring it to me.
Right? I'm trying to think through, if I was a data person,
Right.
From like, at the end of the day, I care about getting the correct answer.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You might miss what some of the correct answer is by having a very strict definition of merit. And then I also think that there is just, I don't know, it's just, to me, it is a concept that is worth being somewhat skeptical of, because we know that it doesn't exist in a silo.
Yeah.
I guess that's my point. Merit does not exist in a silo.
I think I largely agree. And I think we might have fallen into a bit of a trap with looking at things like coding or data science or analytics, because some of these things are a lot more, pardon the phrase,
harder skills.
Sure.
Yes, exactly. More concrete.
Correct.
Sort
a
of
lot
like
less.
There is an answer.
Yes.
There is a code that is correct.
Yes.
And there's a code that is not correct.
Right.
Versus like
something
the
more
marketing manager.
Right.
Right.
The world that you operate in has a lot more variability in terms of a correct answer, because it's a lot more like most people that I seem to engage with. There's a lot more room for the artistic side of things, the creative side of things, and the interpretive side of things.
That's right. Yeah.
And in that world, 100% context and a variety of contexts and a variety of perspectives is extremely valuable.
Right.
Extremely
but it's
so.
interesting. I have a friend who is an astrophysicist.
Yeah.
Is one of the few astrophysicists of color at a very high level in the country. And
it's so surprising that there would be that differentiation too. Sorry.
Right. Like she's like one of very few women of color, like working at her level in, hard sciences, if you would call it that. And she talks a lot about, as a grad school student and faculty member, now coaching and mentoring up and coming scientists from underrepresented backgrounds like hers. She was like, it's so important to have those minds in the science rooms, because they are actually, and that is an area where someone could say, well, it's about hard skills only, right?
I would disagree, just because the physicists I talk to, it's like, this isn't all about hard skills.
No, right?
Like, this is creativity exploding.
There is she's like, they bring such a different perspective to how they approach the problems and the questions that exist about our universe.
You're winning me over.
Right? That like, there actually is still, even there, a need to think about how some of this other context actually can be helpful.
And what that's bringing to mind for me is essentially, and I'm glad you brought up physics, astrophysics specifically, but even in the more theoretical elements of physics, it's having different perspectives that can approach a problem in a different way. So that's incredibly valuable. And
right. It's like you can have 10 people all staring at the same
like,
molecule
big
or same
question,
body of whatever, right?
The big philosophical question of how these should be interacting.
Right. But if you've never had to figure out how to get from point A to point B in a different way besides the one on the map,
then your thoughts are going to operate the same as everyone else in that room with the same dogmatic principles.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think it's something that's
I get
worth
you now.
being, see?
I think we got there, Kamala.
We always do, JT.
Yeah, we do. One way or another.
But I'm really happy that we had this conversation, actually, because I do think that it's worth like just probing and going deeper, because I think that too often people stop at the surface level of some of these tougher conversations. That's a lot of, I think, what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, we disagree, so that's it.
Yeah, and I'd rather say, okay, why? Well, let's figure out our fundamental, what are our first principles saying here? Like, what are we doing wrong?
Right.
We're all intelligent people. You and I are reasonably intelligent people. I don't know. And that means we should be able to understand where things are looking here. No, I appreciate the rabbit hole, actually. That was a lot of fun for me. But this is about you.
Yeah. That was a lot about me. Let's see.
I suppose, but also you have some pretty, you've trod a strange path.
Yes.
In life.
So I think kind of picking back up on the theme of needing to go from A to B in a non-linear way, my career has definitely been that. I think so the chapter of professional life that I'm in right now is that 6 months ago, I left my role at Lionsgate on the film studio side, heading up inclusive content there, and have started a production company with a deal with Lionsgate, which is really exciting.
It's pretty cool.
And an opportunity that I didn't necessarily know was going to be the one that was before me. But if you would line up the people who have deals with studios as producers, I think I'd be pretty comfortable to say that like very few of them have the background that I have. Most would say you can't get to that. You can't get to that B from your A. There's no path from there.
If I recall, somebody even said that to you at one point, that, hey, this doesn't happen. What's being offered doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm very aware of the rarity of the path that I've trod, but it also, to me, it proves that it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the point. That's what matters, right? And so when I'm talking to young people who are like asking for advice and guidance about how to get into this industry, I don't know if my answer is always satisfying, but my answer is usually that like, let your curiosity guide you through the chapters of your career. Because if you stay curious about what the next thing is, interesting things usually follow. The story doesn't need to make sense to anyone else around you while you're living it. Sometimes it only makes sense in retrospect. Like I can look now at all of the professional experiences that I've had thus far and see how they actually all do add up to what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Even though when I left college and got one of my first jobs at a record label, which I can talk about how I got that job because I didn't know anyone really in music, but being a marketing assistant at a record label does not usually lead to you running a production company in Hollywood.
That's fair. Was running a production company in Hollywood even on your radar as something you wanted?
It was not even, I don't even think I knew enough about the business to even know that this was a thing you could do, right? I wasn't aware that was something a person could do per Hamilton. But also I think that like all along the way, as I got closer and closer to doing what I'm doing right now, the road was definitely paved with a lot of people being like, well, you can't possibly make the jump from this place to this place.
Yeah.
And then I made it. And then it's like, well, why would you go from Universal to like Google?
Right.
Like that doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then people thinking like, well, now that you're in tech, like obviously you're never going to go back to traditional media. And I was like,
I was
why
a little
not?
surprised.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, why not? Like, so short version of the path, and then feel free to ask any questions that you want about it. But short version of the path is started in the music business. Got my first job actually from writing a cold letter to Clive Davis, like at his home. And I found his address in the alumni directory after I graduated from college because I was applying to every job board and being like, I think I should be like a decent enough candidate to like get an interview, and was like deafening silence. Like no one wanted to talk to me. And I knew it was about who you knew. And I was like, I don't know anybody, but I was like, let me look in the alumni directory and see if I can find some names that can help me. Sent a letter to probably one of the most powerful people in the directory. Somehow that letter made it to him. I told him like what I wanted to do. And while he didn't call me, he passed the letter on to HR. And I remember they called me and they were like, Mr. Davis got your letter and we'd like to interview you for some of the assistant positions. Which was just like, to me, that was affirmation of something that I feel like I always knew, which is like, always ask.
Yes.
Never tell yourself no. There's enough people in the world that will tell you no, right? You don't count yourself out. Let the opportunity tell you no. You don't talk yourself out of the opportunity. And that boldness, but also that just wherewithal to be like, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to shoot my shot. I believe I belong in every room. I felt like naively, I was like, I think I have something to offer to RCA Records or J Records. Like, I think I'm an interesting person. Like, I have passion, I have intelligence, I have like determination, I'm a hard worker. Like, let me in, let me show you what I'm going to do. And I think that like over the years, as I've, been at so many different companies and have made so many different friends at so many different organizations, from record labels to tech companies to now like TV and movie studios, I have been both surprised and a little bit challenged by how many people I know in my peer set who like they would disqualify themselves from the opportunity before they even asked for it. And I would just like, I'm so thankful that that is not a part of my sort of mental makeup, because like that is a really hard hurdle to jump.
Belief in self is a massive one.
If you don't believe that you can,
Yeah.
if you're not even willing to ask because it's too, like they're going to say no.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that you're disqualifying yourself from. So I try to encourage my friends, my mentees, whomever, like, just ask.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there.
Just go for it.
Just go for it. Like, all they can do is say no, and that doesn't change anything. You already don't have it. So asking for it and not getting it is not a change.
Yeah.
But asking for it and getting it, that could be a huge change. So I really credit my parents a lot for that, giving me that self-belief. That was so helpful. But moved through my career, was in the music business for 5 years, decided to go to business school as I saw what was happening in the music industry, and how digital disruption and the iTunes store and all of these things and all the record labels were just sort of mostly on the defensive, not on the offensive. Wanted to go to business school to understand better like market disruption and how to respond, and was starting to think about what I would pivot to next if it didn't feel like music was going to be the area where I thought I could make the most impact.
Right.
And while I was in business school, started thinking more about my first love, which was really storytelling.
If you hadn't brought that up, I would have. It is a wonderful through line to this.
Yes, like that's where kind of my story in America started in a lot of ways. My dad is an economics professor, but he loves music. So that was a huge influence on me. I grew up listening to a lot of music. But one of the first things that we did as a family were like, I wasn't allowed to watch much TV. Mm-hmm. My parents thought most TV was kind of bad for you, which
they're not wrong.
It's not untrue.
Yeah.
But I was allowed to watch The Cosby Show.
Nice.
Right? And we loved The Cosby Show as a family, and A Different World, and some of the other shows that came later, Fresh Prince, Family Matters. And growing up at a time where I felt like there are too few shows that reflect the level of pride, joy, love that I feel as a Black person, that I think is a part of our culture. Why are there so few?
Yeah.
And so when I went to business school, I started to explore more about like, what would it be like to like, who are the people in Hollywood that get to decide what shows we have? Who are the people in Hollywood that get to determine what shows get made, what movies get made, who gets to be a star, whose story can be told? I want to be one of those people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got started here.
I think the only show that I would have added to that from my reference, because all those were pretty obvious in my life. You can't throw Saved by the Bell. Like,
I loved Saved by the Bell.
Thank you.
I grew up on Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot that you left out.
I know. I was thinking through.
Like one
See,
of my
I missed
favorite
that
shows.
one. I never watched that one.
You have
but
to
the
go
Wonder
back.
Years was solid.
You know, I'm a Boy Meets World person. Over
Agree to
Wonder
disagree.
You know, listen.
You know what? We're not even going to parse this one.
We can each pick our favorite Savage.
I forgot.
It's kind of funny that they were on parallel coming of age shows.
I had never really noted
parallel
that.
like childhood like loves.
I was Winnie Cooper, so I'm a big fan of her.
Team Topanga all the way.
My brother might have been Team Topanga
all the way.
Yep.
So so I just remember growing up and realizing that like TV and movies have such an outsized influence on culture and society.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm a firm believer that we have shows like Will and Grace and movies like Philadelphia to thank for a lot of the progress that's been made when it comes to acceptance of and rights for LGBTQIA people. We're not done by any means, and a lot of things are being rolled back. But I feel like when you tell stories about communities and you humanize them and you center them in an authentic way, and people who are not of those communities also find connection with those people, it changes just how we move through the world. And like, I really wanted to be at the center of that. But, you know, moving out to LA as someone who had only worked in the music business, had only worked in marketing, figuring out like, how do I get started in Hollywood? Once again, I was hit by a lot of people being like, well, what you're trying to do is not possible, but if you want to do it, like, you have to start over from the beginning.
At some point, they're going to have to start feeling bad about doubting you in this. It's going to sink in, right?
I think that you learn, I can't remember, I think it was a professor of mine at Harvard Business School who said something that really stuck with me, that advice is an experience good, by which she means it is not a tangible good in the way of like, there's an objective way to determine if this ketchup is good or bad, right? There isn't an objective way to determine if someone's advice is good or bad. It's good if it works for you. It's bad if it doesn't.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I think that for me, I had always kind of come up with this belief that when it comes to advice, I would always try to cast a wide net because I would want to hear all the different points of view. Doesn't mean I agree with you or I'm going to do what you are saying I should do, but I want to know kind of like, what are all the different ways that someone might think about this?
Right.
And think about sort of what resonates with me the best. Yeah. And then over time, I feel like I have found my mentors and advocates and supporters in my career from the people whose advice resonated with me more often than not. Yeah. Right? Because I think that sometimes it takes a minute to figure out what the right answer is or how to get from point A to point B, because there isn't one way. There's a lot of different ways. And one of the things that I did notice, both when I was working in the music industry and then when I moved out to LA, I did a lot of like informationals. I was trying to get 20-minute, 30-minute like phone meetings at the time. Now would be Zoom meetings or coffees with like anybody that did anything in the industry. Yeah. My husband talks a lot about the fact that when I moved to LA, I had told him that my first 6 months or maybe even a year in LA was sort of, I had some sort of social networking thing like 4 to 5 times a week for like a year. It
seems like you still do from watching your LinkedIn feeds.
You know, I think I still may have that schedule. It's true. But I would just ask everybody of every level, like, how did you get here?
Yep.
And one of the things that not because I wanted to copy their path, but because I wanted to understand the multiplicity of paths. And when I would talk to more senior people, I would usually ask them, like, are you in the job that you thought you were going to be in or wanted to be in when you were 21 and out of college? Right. And almost all of them said, no, I didn't even know this job existed, or some version of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I kind of had a lot of faith that the path would unfold in ways that I couldn't quite anticipate. But if I showed up to every opportunity, like super hungry, super curious, willing to work hard and brought excellent work, some other next opportunity that I couldn't predict yet would come up. And I think I'm sitting in one of those right now.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually really appreciate that that's one of the questions that you ask. It's one of the questions I want to ask every single person I meet.
Yeah.
Is how did you get where you are? Like what are the twists and turns? What decisions did you make? What were you shooting for? Did you aim high and miss? Did you aim high and exceed? Did you not even aim and here we are?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so wonderful to watch the different paths that people can take.
Yeah.
Because so many times what I hear is advice based on this idea that there's a straight line that we're supposed to be taking through life. I'll I don't believe that anymore, but I sure did for a long time.
Yeah. It is really interesting that there are a lot of people that will give the straight line advice, even though they themselves did not take the straight line.
Truth.
They think that they are, I'm the exception. For most people, you have to do it this way.
What I'm learning is pretty much everybody is the exception, and we aren't really recognizing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, I've got this sort of thesis around the importance of every single person, and it's hard to scale in our current global society. That being said, that through line of storytelling is something that I find to be, I had said earlier that I was surprised at the time when you went to Lionsgate. And over the coming years from that point, I sort of sat back, and I don't just pick on you. I look at a lot of the people that I know. So
no,
but
I'm
yours had
curious about
caught
the
me.
surprise.
Yeah, well,
I'm
yours had
curious
caught
about
me
the
more off
surprise,
guard.
Okay.
And I know the
I'd love
cohort
to
of
hear more
folks.
about that.
Yeah, the cohort of folks that we worked with were fairly interesting in their own right.
Yeah.
And people went to various places, but a lot of them stayed the path of marketing or whatever else we were doing in tech.
It was a big pivot. Yeah.
Big pivot for you, bigger than most. Actually, yeah, bigger than most, I think, is a fair way to put it. But then as I kept an eye on where you were going, what you were doing, it all started to make sense. And then when we spoke a few months ago about part of what your passion was and in elevating these less promoted voices within the industry and within storytelling, it all clicked for me.
Yeah.
And while at the time it had been surprising, in retrospect, and I think you came to exactly this point in the conversation we were having, or the story you were telling earlier, like it all makes sense when you look at it from the end.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I have always been doing a version of what I'm doing now, just in different environments. Like I was remembering while you were talking, like one of the most memorable experiences that I had at Google was working on this campaign that I'd called Rooted in Music. I don't know if you remember this.
I don't remember the campaign names, but I definitely remember some memorable moments in some meetings.
When I was working on Google Play Music, we had a chance to do our first like TV commercial on the BET Awards. And I had a pitch, and I don't even recall exactly like where it started, but where it ended was we should do a like extended piece of content and then cut it down to a 30-second piece for TV on some of the origins and influences in Black music, and use Quincy Jones as sort of like
I remember this one.
our like auteur for that, right? Because he's such a legendary producer. One of the things that I loved so much about being at Google, especially at that time, was like there was a feeling that you could do almost anything. Like we had so much freedom. And we honestly, let's be honest, we had so much money.
Yeah.
And there was so much just willingness to experiment and try things. And I remember I pitched it to my manager, and I had an amazing manager when I was at Google Play Music. I'm going to go ahead and shout out Zena, because she's amazing.
She's amazing.
And I remember that I pitched this idea to her, and she was like, go for it. And I don't remember the machinations of how exactly we made it to Quincy Jones, but we got there. And we did this whole shoot at his house with him and his son, who's also a producer, and talked about his early musical influences. And we're trying to stitch the thread from the music that Quincy grew up listening to, and then that influenced what he produced, to the music and artists that were on the BET Awards that year. And I remember we did not only this content shoot, we did a whole brunch with like music influencers, all, in support of like elevating the brand of Google Play Music.
Yeah.
I think that is not that dissimilar from what I'm doing right now, right?
No. And it is a direct line from what you were doing before.
Right. It was always for me about like elevating the voices of underrepresented communities, advocating for the importance and value of underrepresented audiences to boost any product, any brand, any piece of IP that you're trying to elevate. those are the audiences that are always the tastemaker audiences. Those are the audiences that go ahead of other audiences and let people know what's cool. I mean, we're seeing it right now with the movie Sinners, which I'm so excited about. I think that when you pay attention to underrepresented and underestimated audiences and serve them things that are authentic and exciting, they carry the message in such a special way that really can create excitement in the marketplace that results in commercial rewards. I've always believed that. I've always said that in every room that I've been in. I've always marketed from that perspective. And now, as someone who's more on the creative side and is curating and sourcing stories, I think part of, because people will ask me, what keeps you going and what keeps you motivated, especially at a time like this when it feels like you could look at this moment as there are attacks from every side on your hypothesis, Kamala, your hypothesis that underrepresented voices matter, that like caring about inclusion is important to commercial success, that focusing on DEI is like good for the business. Like so much of the popular narrative right now seems to cut against that. So people will ask like, do you still believe? Without asking, do you still believe? I feel like they're kind of asking me like, do you still believe that?
Sure.
And part of what gets me through is that I am more convinced than ever that it is true.
Yeah.
My faith in that has never wavered because to me, I see it so clearly. There are a million different reasons why if entertainment wants to have a future, it needs to have an advocate in audiences of color and LGBTQIA audiences and female audiences. Like, if we don't have those audiences, we will go the way of the opera, museums, other things people still go to, but like they're sort of like, I'll do it when I can. It's not really a part of my life.
Right.
Right? A small selection of people like might do it, but it's not like what is cool.
It's not. It's also a higher barrier to entry of time and effort.
Very much, very much.
And continuing to move your efforts in that more accessible, more continuously, the momentum towards what mainstream is continues to reduce and reduce and reduce.
Very much so.
In its foundation.
And last I heard this was a capitalist endeavor. So I'm assuming we want to make the type of money that, movies and TV shows can make and not the type of money that operas make.
Correct. Yeah, that is one of the fundamental incentive structures that is in our society at present.
No shade to opera.
None. I actually really like opera. Well, okay, I like musicals a little better.
Yeah, me too.
But those opera singers are no joke.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost never ask this question because it almost never occurs to me. But the way you've framed up and the way that you've described sort of this narrative arc of your current career experience, I don't even want to bother asking where you think you're going to go next because I don't even know. You know what? How about that? Where do you think you're going to go next?
Ooh.
And it's not my core question, but now that it's come up, I'm curious. Let's go with it.
Pressure, just because
None.
I know where I want to go next.
Sick. And you don't have to say if you don't want to.
And we'll see. So here's what I would say.
Yeah.
What I have been working on since I moved to LA is what I'm still working on. I firmly believe that in order for us to make at scale the type of inclusive, commercial, impactful content that has the potential to move our culture and society in a positive direction, we need to diversify in a significant way the decision makers that get to determine what we get to see. And so throughout my career, probably from the beginning of my career, but certainly now in this chapter in Hollywood, I am trying to amass all of the skills, relationships, connections, expertise to ascend to a place where I get to be a buyer of content and a person that gets to say yes. So
Yeah.
that is what I'm working on.
That makes sense. And I'm now thinking back to the statement around the potential or the perceived attack on your thesis. And yes, I think that's a fair statement. And I think we're in a point of the market where in the early days, we had 3 to 5 outlets for television programming,
Mm-hmm.
and decisions were made all within a competitive space, all seeking the same market. We've watched this continuous expansion of what's
Mm-hmm.
available within the marketplace across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Niche audiences, I say niche in this case because I have several niches that I'm interested in.
Right.
The content is improving leaps and bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And within each of these groups of audiences, there's so much expansion, and all the growth seems to be at what would have previously been considered the margins.
Mm.
And what I'm starting to see is that those margins are becoming the mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
because what's happening out on, this is horrible framing, but the authenticity doesn't exist in those core 3 to 5 locations anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's become heavily formulaic based on what they expect to work for their old target audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think those old target audiences exist anymore. And that authentic voice is almost the only thing that matters to me, unless I'm strictly seeking a
Yeah.
very boring ass set of information.
Right.
So I almost look at this as you might be in exactly the right place to be making some of these moves. I always expect things to move organically, but that downplays the efforts of people who are seeing opportunity or seeing a need in your case, in a cultural structure, to start opening things up. And maybe those two aren't so dissimilar, and maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can't have one without the other.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah, there was a little word salad there. I was figuring
No,
it out as I went.
I followed. I followed. Um, so I think that I am a little betwixt and between
Sure.
when it comes to what my own hypothesis is around sort of mainstream
Mhm.
versus niche in certain
Yeah.
ways, and the size and impact of those different like sort of ecosystems, and even whether or not I think they are different ecosystems.
Sure.
Part of it is that a big thing that is a North Star for my production company, Kas Kas, which I haven't even named, I should say. So my company is called Kas Kas Productions, and it is called Kas Kas for 2 reasons, but one primarily. My initials are KAS, so that's one. But the bigger reason is I was searching for a name for the company, and the name I really wanted was Good Trouble. I've always felt like I've been up to good trouble my whole career. Good trouble is a phrase popularized by the late John Lewis, who would talk about during his various civil rights fights that we should always be making good trouble in the nation to push the country to be better.
Yes.
Good Trouble is the name of the biography on John Lewis, as well as a documentary on John Lewis. So that name felt very taken. And I was trying to figure out like what would give that same energy. And as I was talking to my parents about my struggles with figuring out what to name the company, my dad goes, well, in Jamaica, Kas Kas is actually a way to say like controversy, like arguments, like disagreements, kind of trouble. And I was like, how do you spell it? And he was like, Kas.
Yeah.
And
You had no choice.
that day I was like, oh, it's Kas Kas Productions, like easy.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of good trouble that this company is trying to be up to. And one of the bigger parts of it, I think, is really trying to redefine what is considered mainstream and what is considered niche.
Cool.
Like, I think that we have all been acculturated and sort of settled
Mm-hmm.
in a narrative that tells us that stories about white characters are for everyone. Those stories are universal.
Right.
And stories about Black characters or Latin characters or Asian characters are niche. They're only for those communities. But I do think that, like, the way that the terms mainstream and niche are usually used
Yeah.
is often in this way.
Absolutely.
Right? That there is something inherently universal about an experience if it is a white experience, but there's something specific about an experience if it is a Black experience. I fundamentally reject that.
Yeah.
In both directions. One, I think white is a very specific experience, right? It's just one that we are more familiar with
Through the media that we've been
through
describing.
the media that we've been consuming.
Right.
But I would I've said to many colleagues, especially in my old job, like, when I would ask them, like, name me a movie that you think is just like culture agnostic, just has no culture, right? And they might name something like Knocked Up or This Is 40 or, you know, whatever it is, or Hangover. And I'm like, those movies are
Those are
so
like the
white.
whitest things I've ever.
Those movies are so white.
Yeah,
There's
they are.
no way that the story could progress that way if these people weren't white.
Yeah.
Right?
So what would be a culturally agnostic film?
There is no such thing.
Okay.
My entire point is that
Because I
there is
couldn't
no
come
such
up with
thing.
one. Yeah.
There is no such thing.
If you had
right?
asked me, I would have felt like put upon because I couldn't have figured one out.
No, but I do think that most people in Hollywood think of white-centered movies as
Sure.
culture agnostic movies.
Sure.
Right?
As they've defined the culture thus far.
Correct. They're like, that's just people.
Right.
Right? That's just a movie about a family. Right? But a movie about Black characters is a movie about a Black family. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a movie about family anymore. It's a movie about a Black family. And I even started to take some issue with even the framing and the terms of like Black movies or Black stories. Like, I know what people mean. And there's times when that language is being invoked from a perspective of pride and ownership.
Yeah.
But there's also times when it is being invoked to diminish, make something smaller, make something feel foreign, right?
Yeah.
This idea that like Black is not a genre. It is not a genre of movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Hollywood, if you say that you're working on a Black movie, people assume that they know everything they need to know about the movie. It's a movie about Black people for Black people. I know how to market that movie. I know like where we need to advertise that movie. I know who the audience is for that movie because the people in it are Black. Whereas if I said I'm working on a movie with a white cast, they would be like, I don't know what to do from here. Like, I need to know, is it a superhero movie? Is it a romance? Is it a horror? Is it a comedy? Those things are germane. And my point is that those questions all still need to be asked if the characters are all Asian.
Oh, for sure.
You still need to know what's the genre of this movie. And so I think that making things that I feel meaningfully challenge the idea that because this movie centers Black people or because this movie centers Asian people, or even like it's the same, like I've heard people say like if a movie centers a young boy or like a group of men, it is still a movie for everyone. And if it is a movie that centers a young girl or a group of girls, it is a movie for girls and women. When you accept theses like that, it stands to reason that you're going to underinvest in those projects because their audience isn't as big as other projects. You're going to prioritize projects that have white leads, male leads, because those are the ones that are universal. And I think that we have to really challenge that thinking, because as long as that thinking stays in place, one, it just means that like less of those movies will get made.
Yeah.
Because those are the movies and television shows that are sidecars to the main thing. They're not the main business. So if the business is under threat and I need to make content that's safe, I'm going to make more of the quote unquote status quo. And I'm going to reject those fringe niche movies.
Yeah. And this sounds from what you're describing to be something of well, not to understate it, but an uphill battle, given the systems in place within Hollywood and the ways that people are used to marketing and framing these conversations.
Yeah.
To use Sinners as an example, I mean, to me, that's a vampire movie.
It's a vampire movie.
And I only haven't seen it because I'm not in the headspace for a vampire movie yet.
Oh my God, you have to see it
It's coming.
immediately.
Immediately?
Immediately, JT.
Oh, okay, fine.
Like, you have to seek out an IMAX immediately.
There's only like 12 in a 2-mile radius here. How dare you put
You
it
have
on
to
me
go.
with this?
I will be following up.
Okay. I'll do my best. I drive out on Friday, God help me. But so how, and I know we're short on time, I see your clock. How do you move this needle in a way effectively in a time frame that is acceptable to you? Because this doesn't seem like a short-term transition.
So I think...
Because this is hearts and minds of the infrastructure surrounding us right where we are.
Yeah. So I think that it takes, we have to make more things like Sinners. We have to say yes to more things like Sinners.
And I agree with that.
Because I think that, like, it is in our industry's best interest from a financial perspective. Let's forget hearts and minds. Let's pretend like we don't care about hearts and minds.
That's actually a better approach.
Right? Like, I do care about hearts and minds, but let's just pretend that, like, we don't.
If you want to succeed, financial makes sense.
It is in our best interest monetarily to retrain audiences to see films that center people of color, women, LGBTQIA, as films that could also be for them, even if they are not of that identity.
Yeah.
Doing that expands the pie. Doing that expands the audience, right? And so there is, for instance, like, there can be a little bit of like a chicken and egg like problem that some like Hollywood folks or studio execs feel like, well, it's been this way since the dawn of time, and like there's nothing I could do to change it.
And they don't like risks.
It is what it is.
They don't like taking risks. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. What I would say to them is that I'm not even going to argue with you about why things are the way that they are. Like, racism, sexism, just like people prefer, like, I don't even want to, like, who cares why it is? Even if I grant you that it is, you're living in a problem of your own creation, so you can uncreate it. It actually is going to be very meaningful to the future of Hollywood to ensure that little boys don't turn their eyes off because the character in it is a girl. Like, that is going to be critical to making sure that we still have an art form and a business that, like, is seen as a mass entertainment vehicle, especially as we are up against all different types of content that is coming in, where people are seeing themselves and people are gravitating towards that, right?
There's a lot of competition right now.
There's so much competition. And I'm not a person who thinks that social media, for instance, is going to immediately supplant like traditional media. But I do think that it's nipping at our heels.
Big time.
And I think that if we allow consumer behavior to fully change and evolve out of watching movies, evolve out of going to theaters, evolve out of sitting in front of series and watching like full things, it's harder to teach someone that habit if it's been lost for a generation. And I talk to so many young people who either haven't been to the movies theater in so long, or the last time I was in the movie theater before Sinners was for Black Panther 2. If we allow it to be this thing that like you only go to on a very special occasion, if the movie is loud enough, it's not actually a part of your life. Like, we don't have a business. And I think that the audience is telling us that they want to see fresh, interesting, original stories.
Yes.
At the very least, I would often joke that I've seen pretty much every life happenstance that can befall a white character from cradle to grave.
There's been a lot of it explored, yeah.
We've seen all those stories. Even if you were just tell all those stories again with different people at the center.
Can we not just make bad remakes, though?
Yes.
Can we have quality writing and story crafting and acting?
I totally think that we can. I feel like there's many, many reasons why.
And this is me begging, because we have so much being remade.
I think that everyone that I know in the business is really, really thrilled with what's happening with Sinners, and is really, really happy for Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, because I think that it proves,
that's right,
on a lot of different fronts, things that the movie business and entertainment really needs to be true to continue to motivate. This idea that people don't just want to see the same stories that they've seen again. People do want to have fresh, original experiences. If you're someone like me who's like, people do want a little bit of message behind their entertainment. They can carry, they can hold that. They will be able to show up to that. That does not undermine the entertainment proposition. Like, I'm a believer that we have to make impactful content commercial, and we have to make commercial content have an impact. Like, both needs to be true. We can't make impact if we don't have audience, so we have to make things that people want to see. But if we're going to gather large groups of people, let's tell them something somewhat useful. And I think that while it can be a hard needle to thread, I think when you get it right, you really, really, really make a splash. And that's exciting. I think, we are on, at least theatrically, the last few months, it seems like have been on an upward trajectory where audiences are like, okay, I'm liking the things that you're bringing to theaters right now. I'm starting to come again. And I think it is up to us as the people that have the privilege of reading people's scripts and figuring out what could be a good story.
That is really cool, by the way.
Longer discussion for another time. Just sort of like the entire curation, filtration, whatever that system is, has lots of problems.
Yeah.
And it'll take me all the way back to my merit conversation, which I will not go to. But we get to do some really cool work. Let's say yes to some cool, original, interesting, different perspectives that can broaden the horizons of what people are willing to engage with. Because I don't want to tell anybody what Sinners means to them. I can only tell them what it means to me. But I think that through the vampire mythology, Ryan and team explored some real interesting truths about Black culture and how it has been suctioned by other groups. I'll just say that.
Well, now I'm going to have an opinion at some point. Thanks.
You're going to have to see it.
You're always pushing me. I see how it is. Kamala, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
I would be lying if I said this was done. I could use another hour or two, but reality dictates. I really appreciate you letting me come in, and it's so good to catch up with you.
You too. This has been really, really fun. Thank you for having me on the show.
Always welcome.
All right.
Thanks everybody for listening, and see you next time.